Hi, I'm making this video to explain why I'm not a big fan of the Blackhawk SERPA holsters. What we have here is a Blackhawk brand CQC holster, which stands for Close Quarters Concealment. It's a fairly basic Kydex holster, plastic, but it has one feature called the SERPA locking system. It's Blackhawk's patented locking system. It positively locks the gun into place as a retention system. And this holster is for the Glock 19, but I'm going to use the Glock 17 in it because I don't mind if it gets trashed. And you can see what I think is a design flaw. They're basically the same size frame, so it's not going to affect the function of the holster. First thing you do is you check to make sure your gun's unloaded. You take the magazine out, which I don't have one in, and then you look very carefully to make sure it's unloaded. It's pretty easy to shoot yourself if you're not careful. So the design of the holster is to slide the gun in, and you'll hear a click here. That's the SERPA system engaging. Then the gun's locked in pretty tightly, unless this button is depressed, at which time the gun can be removed fairly easily. Fairly interesting retention design. Works okay, no problem with it. Some people criticize, and again we're going to check to make sure the gun's unloaded. Some people criticize it because if you have fairly large hands, which I'm medium to large hands, and you press the button with your finger like this and remove the gun, it is possible to go ahead and actuate the trigger, where your finger should be down the slide. And that's how you would want to draw. Some people draw like this and end up with their finger on the trigger, accidental discharge. I'm not too concerned about that because I think it can be trained around. I'm actually concerned about this item jamming and making the holster and gun completely unusable. So let's take a look at the internal parts. Here you can see the internal parts of the gun. It's got a tension piece down here to keep the gun pressed against the auto lock system. And then it's got the auto lock system right here. Hopefully you can see that. I'm moving it. That's the piece. This piece right here is what locks onto the trigger guard. So it's now locked in, now it's unlocked and can be taken out. And you actuate that by pressing the button, and that moves that piece out of the way. But the part I'm talking about, the important piece to focus in on, is this action right here. If you look right there, it's exposed on the inside. That has to be able to move like that to remove the gun from the holster. It absolutely has to be able to move. And if a piece of debris gets in there and jams it, there's absolutely nothing you can do to get the gun out. If the gun's in securely, and a piece of debris jams this piece right here, this won't move, and you can't dig your finger in there to get it out. You're going to have to cut the holster off the gun. And since I'm sitting here at home, I can cut the holster off the gun. But if I were carrying it as a police officer or a person carrying a concealed weapon legally, I would not be able to do that in a situation where I needed it. And what's worse is it could jam and you don't even know it until you need it. Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. Again, I'll remove the gun using the safe method. Worked just fine. But I've had a friend that had this with a eyeglass screw. And what we're going to use here is a button to simulate debris. And debris that I've encountered that can jam these up a little bit, unfortunately I was able to shake it loose when it happened to me, is like pebbles of medium to small size, loose gravel, stuff like that. It has enough room to get in around this piece and can still be large enough, and I hope you can see these metal tabs down here, right there. It's still large enough to jam. It's small enough to get in and large enough to jam those. So we're going to simulate it with a button. Let me put it in here. You know, everybody's got buttons on their shirts or whatever rolling around in your glove box. That button, I hope you can see it, is now jamming the SERPA system. Also, I've done this before, but I don't really care to simulate it to waste your time. The button can fit in here. Like, if I had this in my glove box, and the button can fit right here. If I had this in my glove box, and it was just rolling around, the button could jam in there and get exactly where it is now. And the button is fairly slick, so you could probably, with the gun in the holster, shake it out. But as it is now, the button's jammed in there. And let me show you what that does. This button has to be depressed in order for the gun to be released from the slide. It will not depress. As long as that button is in that position, or other debris, small rocks, pebbles, dirt, eyeglass screw in the case of my friend, or pebbles in my case, this will not actuate. Your gun will be stuck in there. And unless you can wiggle this out by shaking it or getting, I don't know, like a pen or a clothespin or something like that in there, like a needle or something, you are going to have to cut this holster off, because the holster is a one-piece design. There's nothing you can do. And that's a very dangerous design, because philosophically, at the philosophical level, you want as few things between you and your defensive firearm as possible. I'm not going to put my Glock 17 in here with that button in there, although I'm fairly confident that I could shake it loose, because I really don't want to have to cut the holster off the gun. Other than that, it's a fairly interesting design. But this right here, I cannot even name the thousands of things that can cause this, that roll around in my pockets: pennies, buttons, screws, pebbles, whatever, that will not actuate. Look, I'm pressing it as hard as I can. Flashlight malfunction. And you can see that this piece right here, which is absolutely necessary for the gun to function, to be removed. This piece has to be moved out of the way by the button. I'm pressing it. It's not going anywhere. That gun is staying in the holster. It's staying in the holster no matter what happens to you, which is, in my opinion, a design flaw. And of course, the button just falls right out right now because the gun's not in, and because the button is fairly easy to remove. But there's other things that could possibly cause that. So what do you do about it? Well, if you want retention, nothing's wrong with a good old thumb strap. The gun fits really nicely into it. This is a Galco. Snaps in, very secure. It's not going anywhere until I cause the thumb strap. And no amount of pebbling or debris is going to jam a thumb strap. It's just pretty simple. If it snaps, it'll unsnap. Or you can go no retention and just rely on the tightness of the holster to hold it, like this other Galco, similar model. It's a very tight fit. It's not going anywhere really, just walking around. But when I want it, firm pull, got it. Or you could buy one of Blackhawk's other products, which does not have the SERPA auto lock system that, in my opinion, is fatally flawed. You can just get a straight Kydex holster. They make them without this, and so it's just a Kydex holster held in by tension. And Phobos makes them, other companies, Blackhawk makes them, and that's just fine too. I don't want a mechanical device that is unshielded on the outside and really easy to cause to fail, to get between me and my gun. So I pretty much choose not to. So again, this was a criticism of the Blackhawk CQC holster with the SERPA auto lock system, specifically about how the auto lock system has a design flaw, in my opinion, that causes it to get jammed up and become totally inoperable and get between you and your gun. Again, it's worth noting that a lot of people criticize these because you can pull the trigger if you don't unholster them right, because your finger's kind of doing something here and you can slip onto the trigger. But I think that's not as big as an issue as the fact that your holster will be glued to your gun and you'll have to cut it off if a pebble gets in there or something. So thanks for watching the video, and I'll appreciate seeing your comments, fans of Blackhawk or not.